Hi and welcome to Dynamics Update. Today is a very special episode because we are not at home and we are not in a studio and we are not with the podcast poodle on remote. we are actually in Slovenia at DynamicsMinds. So with me, of course, I have Gustav as usual.
Hello, Johan. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
No, I'm great.
Yeah. You can't.
We are in a studio of sorts, right? We're in a podcast recording room.
Yes, exactly. But we have a very special guest today, someone that I've been chasing down for like 1.5 years or so. And finally, we locked him in a room here at DynamicsMinds. So could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Lane Swenka, and I'm a principal program manager at Microsoft, focusing on all of the unified experiences for both administration as well as developers, effectively trying to move LCS workloads into Power Platform. So,
very cool.
Yeah, so that's the actual subject for today. Understanding what will happen once LCS goes away. So that's
yes, indeed,
the question on everyone's mind right now.
Yes, when is LCS going away?
Yeah, right? and especially what will happen afterwards and how will we do it?
How will we live without LCS?
Yes, there is a way.
There is a way.
Yes, yeah, have no fear.
So. Yeah. So if we start with the new development environments and unified environments, so we are moving things into Power Platform Admin Center, which basically means that all of the administration is done from there, right?
Yes, that's correct. And then the big mental shift with all of this is trying to reconsider F&O for being an environment, which it certainly is in LCS today. So every time you create a sandbox or a production environment, that is one-to-one with an instance of F&O. It's just what we've been used to. But in the Power Platform Admin Center, an environment is more of a larger scope. Yeah. It has kind of that one-to-many model. You can have different Dynamics apps, multiple Power Apps and flows, co-pilots, Copilot.
We have to mention it at least once.
Yeah, that's right, multiple times. Yeah. You can have all of those stored in one environment powered by Dataverse. Yeah. And that's really where we want to move F&O to, is to be that Dynamics F&O app hosted by Dataverse in one unified environment. So.
Yeah, that's really cool. I used the PowerShell script to spin up new environments as late as yesterday because I used it for a demo purpose and it's like a backup. And it's very simple and it kind of takes away, you have to remember it's a lot of complexity in those little things. I run one script and I get one F&O environment, a Dataverse environment, I get Copilot, and it's pretty fast as well. And I forgot to mention in my presentation that this is like super complicated stuff, really, but just with the flick of a switch, it just spins up with controls of data, of course, but you can use your own data set later on, I would imagine.
Exactly. I think that's one of the other things I want to highlight with Power Platform is just the rich ecosystem we have of tools, APIs. That was something that LCS has always kind of lacked. Yeah. There was a great community set of tools that has filled a very large gap there for many years. But within Power Platform, we have Power Platform CLI, which is primarily used by developers for like Dataverse and solution management, but it also has environment creation and kind of environment CRUD. We also have a PowerShell module for administrators, and now we have connectors as well, so you can even create logic apps and flows to manage your environment fleet effectively. So.
That's actually one of my favorite parts of this, is that we actually get an API where we can actually do things in an automated fashion, because LCS hasn't really been very good at automating things. we were very happy when we finally got to be able to deploy packages automatically from Azure DevOps.
Yes.
But
not to production, right?
No, then not to production.
So there are gaps.
But then it sort of stopped. Yes. It never got any more fun than that. So
yes, and service principles, right? The whole multi-factor auth thing has been a constant, I think, pain point for customers, right? Have to have an account that's not MFA enabled.
Yeah.
And, you have to sacrifice something to the Entra ID.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I'm here again. Now I need an account. Sorry, guys.
Yes, precisely. So everything is service principle enabled in Power Platform and not just available but encouraged. So
that's good. That's good. And also, I know that one of the questions coming up here is also regarding the different tiers. We have the tier 1, the cloud hosted environments. We have the tier 2 up to 5, and then we have production, because production is somewhere in between or something like that.
Yes.
So you talked about this in your session today about the different tiers, which is an interesting part.
Yeah, and it's all kind of going to the change first in business model. Yep. So F&O actually was using what CRM did many years ago, which was the slot model. You have whole environment slots, and you pay per environment on like a flat monthly fee. I think for Dataverse or the earlier versions of CRM, it was around like $500 a month for a sandbox. And with F&O, as you mentioned, we've had these different tiers. And you can, when you buy your licenses for F&O today in LCS, you get a sandbox and you get a production environment, and that's it. And if you want more environments, that's a monthly purchase. Customers can put them on their enterprise agreement. But those go all the way up to, I think, $12,000 US a month for the top tier. And one thing that we've seen a lot of times is customers will buy one of these higher tier performance environments for data migration, perf testing, and so forth. But then when they go live, their production environment is using the subscription estimator, which is their actual anticipated workload, right? So production could be much smaller and less performant than one of their sandboxes. And that's always kind of a hard conversation to have is, how could that be so? And they're really just separate purchases. Production is based on your licenses and usage, and sandbox was just this one-off thing that you bought. So in Power Platform, all of the environments with Dataverse, so kind of ignoring F&O for a second, everything is equal for a given customer, and it's everything based on your licenses. And so every 24 hours, we detect how many Power Apps licenses you have, Dynamics, and so forth, and then that will set the auto scale limit for Dataverse. Now that F&O is being modeled as an app in Dataverse in Power Platform, that same signal will go first to Dataverse, and then if F&O is present, the same signal will go to F&O and say, hey, the customer went from the minimum 20 to 100. They upped their license count. And so what that's going to do is then auto scale out all of their sandboxes, and their production sandbox will always be equal, so there shouldn't be any like misrepresentations of what the performance will be when they go live. So there's just a lot of benefits to this model.
Yeah, I've always said with the tier environment is that the problem has been that in AX 2012, the customer were used to throwing money at the problem. When things were too slow, they could always pay for better hardware and get it to go faster. The problem is that there is no go fast SKU in F&O today.
Yes, right.
It's all up to the subscription estimator. If you don't have the right circumstances, there is basically you can't throw money at the problem, which means that we end up in a situation where if you have performance issues and you have more transactions than your number of user licenses sort of accounting for, then you can, if you're lucky, then you can add a support issue and you get scaled up a bit. Mm-hmm. And in more cases, you will have to buy like a transactional license.
Yeah, the order line SKU. Or if you have under licensed people, that's an easy one. It's like, hey, we have more people logging into the environment than have actually had licenses. F&O never had any like really strict license enforcement. No. I believe that is changing at some point. I don't exactly know the
scary,
date.
But it's
but before you do any kind of enforcement like that, you have to be able to show customers where are they, right? Because it's hard to know across a lot of environments. And so actually a lot of the Power Platform Admin Center reporting capabilities will show you, here's all of my licenses, here's all my users, is there a delta? A lot of...
and some grace period so you can adjust. Mainly storage, I would imagine, is the driver there for F&O environments.
Storage is another one. And so, as part of all of this, F&O has moved, as I mentioned, like the slot model is what we have today, but we're moving to a storage-based model. LCS isn't really being changed to work with storage. No. It still just knows about environment slots. If you are really only supposed to have, let's say, a terabyte of data, and based on all of your environments today in LCS, you're at like 5 terabytes. If you have an open environment slot because you bought it on that monthly basis, you can still just deploy it and get even further in the hole. Yeah. We have nothing to stop you, right? But in Power Platform, everything looks at your current state of storage. If you're out of storage or if you're over, then you actually can't deploy anything new. No. So much more strict storage management, and just means we all need to look at those cleanup jobs. But there's more features that are necessary as well.
Yeah, so. You made a point there as well with one big pain point has been the backpack move and the restore operations down to tier 1 environments. So you're doing something there with transactionless. I was going to say transactionless. That was the old joke. There is somewhere in the code, I think, a comment that still says transaction in AX.
I think most likely,
It sounds cooler with transaction.
It is a transaction. It's like sounds yummy almost.
Exactly.
No, there's we also refer referred to it as advanced copy internally because just naming things for us is difficult. But one of the ways in which customers have proliferated their storage today is by copying production everywhere, right? And when you copy what we call database refresh in LCS today, it copies the entire database from prod to sandbox and across all the different sandboxes. And there was no option to do anything else. No. And so really we kind of force customers to overconsume in some cases. And the ERP system, it's transactional integrity is paramount. So you can't just go into the ERP and delete stuff because they're posted. Those items, those release products are permanent at this point because they have usage. That's just how ERPs work. Whereas like in Dataverse, I can just pop open a table, select star and hit delete, go clear that thing out. Super easy. So ERP customers haven't had a lot of tools to keep the storage in check. So that's where there's kind of two features that are going to help with this. One that I actually demoed today was the transactionless copy. So that actually allows you to copy. The target is always in Power Platform. You can have a source environment in LCS. Target is in PPAC, or within Power Platform, Sandbox A to Sandbox B and so forth. But it strips out all of the transactions, does a full truncate. We use the metadata on the table in F&O to determine if it's a transaction header, transaction line, worksheet header, worksheet line. I think there's like 10 different table group properties, and then we just truncate them out. And as we were building this feature, I was just like, this is going to be a testing nightmare. And to my surprise, when we wrote the process, we did our first transactionless copy, opened up F&O. I didn't get any error messages. I started clicking around, and I created a new sales order because the list page was empty, and it picked up the number sequence where the number sequence left off. It let me pick, pack, and ship, post that thing, invoice it. Like it was cool. Literally, I think the reason it works so well is because it was so holistic. It deleted every transaction. It didn't just forget some tables in between and leave it data, nightmare on the customer. So, it's a great way to reduce storage. And so we're seeing some customers, went from I think 13 or 15 terabytes down to 3. So like a 90% reduction, I think was the best case we've seen. Typically, the larger the source environment, the heavier it has in transactions, so the bigger bang for the buck.
So that leads me to a question I need to ask. What's the biggest production environment database that you have ever seen?
So I will say we have a lot of customers using Hyperscale, which allows you to go over the, I believe it's like 4 or 4.5 terabyte limit that Azure SQL has on individual databases. So I will say that goes up to 100 terabytes. We don't have a customer on 100 terabyte, but we have significantly higher than 4.5 terabytes.
Okay, that's pretty. That's pretty costly as well, looking at the license model. So you need to look into some archiving solutions there, I would imagine.
And that is the other feature. There is a data archival capability that's being built in F&O, and it's going to leverage Dataverse for long-term retention. I actually don't know a ton about that, but I believe that will be the best way to keep production lean. And so if that's smaller, that also has cascading.
Of course. We had a session with Purvesh from Fast Track earlier to discuss the archiving feature in F&O, and it looks very promising. So you just need to set your archiving rules correctly, otherwise accounting departments will find you.
Like, where did my stuff go?
Exactly.
But it's also important because we are not used to archiving stuff. Even in AX 2012, if you ask the finance department, what would you like to keep, and they say everything, of course.
Please and thank you.
Everything as well. To keep everything.
So it's really important to I think there is a lot of work that needs to be done in order to get to a point where we can actually start activating archiving, because we need to understand what are we legally required to keep, and what can we get rid of, and also in the next step, where does the data end up in this way it ends up in one lake or in Fabric, but understanding how can we consume that data after everything is exported to somewhere else.
I think it's a whole just again like a mental shift whenever we're switching business models or environment management approach. We really have to start training folks to think about their storage because that is where the cost driver is now. If you don't need to keep the data for compliance reasons or regulatory reasons and so forth, and you don't need it for operational reasons, it's a good idea to try and shrink that,
Yeah.
archive it or truncate it, as the
Exactly.
case may be. So
Yeah, and there's a lot of cleanup jobs running right now. I think one of the main things I notice nowadays is that you get a lot of notifications like this job is not running, run this job. It's very informative. I think Microsoft sees us as children running around, so you need to kind of like, okay, enforce this job, please, and then it's enforced. But it's really good because like retail, you have payment transactions, they take up a lot of space, and it's for no reason if it's like older than 90 days. So
yeah, right.
that's a very good cleanup job that you
the team that I'm on, I actually have my whole history is in F&O and Dynamics AX, but I actually am in the Power Apps team now. And the team that I'm on actually just released this feature called Environment Groups.
Yeah.
It's brand new. It just went GA in Power Platform Admin Center. And it's a way to take a bunch of environments that you want to govern in the same way and put them in a group. And once they're in the group, there's another tab on that called Rules. And that's where you can set up different like policies that apply to all of those environments. And then you can't manage those environments individually for those things anymore. So great thing for like environment settings, backup retention. There's a lot of things in there for low-code management as well. There's nothing in there for F&O yet, but as you can imagine, I'm going to be pushing some F&O stuff there.
It would be nice to be able to set up like the cleanup jobs, the archiving policies.
Data hygiene for
Yeah,
F&O, right? Like here's how I want these things to run. I want all of my sandboxes to have these things applied, all my production environments to behave like this because they need a little bit longer, and exactly. So try and make that easier. Yeah.
Yep.
It's very cool.
That's really, really cool.
Another question that always comes up when it comes to LCS, I mean, the usage of the LCS analysis tools, right? Telemetry. So I've already activated this on most environments using the application insights. And it's really, I mean, you can get stuck down the rabbit hole just looking at all that data. It's like, oh, what are they doing, my users? But it's also coming with like CPU and actual DTU. The tools that we had or still have in LCS will be pushed to application insights, I guess.
Yeah, the goal is to get to parity with what we have in LCS. So most notably, we haven't had like some of the deadlocking stuff from SQL and some of the AOS properties. So how the App Insights feature, I actually helped build that as well. I have my fingers in a lot of different things apparently. But the App Insights feature was built on the F&O runtime, and it's near real time. So within a few seconds, any telemetry or anything that's happening inside of F&O as it's running gets sent to App Insights. Where LCS had some extra features that is not in that feature today, in App Insights are things that are happening outside of F&O, like at the database layer. So if the database has a crash or the AOS has a crash, the AOS cannot send telemetry, right?
Nope.
And so, it's so by design, those things were not there. So we're building some kind of supporting services that will be monitoring and sending to the same App Insights instance for some of those external things like CPU, RAM, AOS, like overload, throttling, exactly. So as soon as we have those, then we'll be looking to deprecate kind of the LCS environment monitoring stuff in favor of that.
That makes sense.
But it's also good to have it in the same application insights instance, because then you will be able to correlate different things that happens within F&O and outside of F&O into one timeline.
Yes, precisely.
This is really important.
And actually, one other unique scenario there is with unified environments. So this works with unified environments as well. The environment ID that you use, that you normally grab from LCS, you just grab the Power Platform environment ID, snap it into F&O, and then it knows how to send the events. But you can also set that same thing up for Dataverse and point it to the same App Insights instance. And so then you can start to see that end-to-end across the whole unified environment.
I did the same for Commerce as well, but Commerce is very chatty. So I think I saw the usage like boom, just went up. So I had to turn it off because I couldn't like see anything useful in it yet. But I need to push that to different insights, I think, to get some traction there.
Yeah, I think that team is looking to provide similar mechanisms where, like, when you're setting up App Insights in F&O, you can choose what do I want to capture. It's not just whole thing is on or whole thing is off, and I think that's where commerce is going as well. We've actually seen quite a lot of uptake by the supply chain and warehousing team too. So you're just going to see more and more events and telemetry, but again, each one of those should have a switch, and you choose when you want to turn it on.
And that's also a new expertise that needs to be for F&O people is to understand the custo and understand how to filter and maintain storage in application insights as well.
Yes, with the log analytics workspaces.
And
Yeah.
rules, exactly how to set up and configure rules to
storage,
check it.
right? Yeah, back to the storage topic. Yes,
and it shouldn't be a big problem. You think about logs, but it rapidly becomes a problem when you turn on CSU and you have a lot of different platforms.
Fortunately, it already has an archiving feature, so we're already home.
Yes, yeah, they absolutely do, and they have different retention settings. I think by telemetry type. So if it's like page views, you can say that I only need like 7 days of that information, but I need 90 days of something else. Or it's totally configurable. So yeah, lots of good things. One thing that we did cover in the session today that was kind of cool to see was the timeline for LCS deprecation. So we've never actually shared that publicly, but now we've kind of come out with the formal timeline. And so for, I guess, all the viewers or the listeners, the end goal is to have LCS decommissioned by the end of 2025. And so really where we need to get to is the new unified developer experience getting GA, which is imminent. I think it's a couple of weeks from now. Along with that, that's prompted us to get the admin experiences going because you have to have some administration of the developer environments. But then we'll also need to build support for sandbox and prod. Once that's all GA, roughly in October of this year, then that starts kind of our deprecation path, like at least 12 to 15 months of kind of LCS teardown.
Cool.
So.
And like practically, it's going to be similar to moving from GOs and LCS, right? You order like moving it from...
Yes. Yeah, we are looking to make it self-service. And so we are actually looking to leverage that project migration manager that we have where customers can move from the United States instance of LCS to the like local EU or France. There'll just be a new option there for Power Platform Admin Center, and there will only be one Power Platform Admin Center. There's not like multiple instances of PPAC. There's just one. Because again, there's no real storage in Power Platform Admin Center. Like LCS has an asset library and you upload things there. You don't do any of that in PPAC. So they only have just like a thin client and it's just like a website, traditional one. There's no database or any backing data store for PPAC. Everything is stored inside of individual Dataverse environments. And so that's, obviously geo-bound to wherever Dataverse was deployed. So just again, a different paradigm. But yeah, so with all of those timelines, we're looking to route new customers towards the end of this year, like in the fall. So as a brand new customer comes to the LCS front door, because we know there's still going to be documentation out there for LCS. There's going to be partners. They're like, the first thing you do is you go to LCS to get environments going, right? Like it's just it's a habit.
Yeah, of course.
And so there will be effectively like a survey that says, are you using any of the features that we don't have ready yet, like Commerce or AX 2012 Upgrade? And if they say, no, I'm not using any of those, then we'll route them over to Power Platform, have like a YouTube video that will play, kind of introduce them,
music,
right?
Yeah,
exactly. And then, then off they go and can start deploying things there. And eventually there won't be questions, right? As we solve each of one of those components, then it'll just be, everybody routes. So.
Yeah, so I don't know if you can talk about this, but I noticed two things. So first of all, the AX 2012 migration tools, database and code migration that are in LCS today. I don't know if you can talk about what will happen to those.
Yeah, so the plan with, as you can imagine, every aspect of LCS is either going to be just straight up deprecated. It has no future. And in a lot of cases, those are happening to things that are just low utilization, no utilization, or they have a new way of doing it, like the asset library is integral to LCS. It's not even necessary in Power Platform. So like you can just, you don't have to upload your code anywhere first. You just send it straight to Dataverse. So you build your code in Azure DevOps, stream your code into Dataverse. And then there's things like the code upgrade tools, some of the upgrade reports that we have in LCS as well. All of those are going to be moved to like a toolkit, and it'll just be hosted on GitHub, and you can run it on-prem. Because you have your AX 2012 stuff on-prem anyway, so you can analyze your code, get like the output into Excel to see like what are all the things that I need to go turn into extensions, and then also any of the like data kind of cleaning reporting that comes out of that.
Basis, right? You just download and run it.
Yeah, and I think Fast Track's going to take most of that. So they'll be working with partners and with customers, and it'll just be basically like an on-premise tool.
Cool. You also said the magic word on-prem, so local business data.
Yes. So that one's kind of a funny one. The customers of LBD or local business data or F&O on-prem have always kind of found it painful to use LCS. They have to upload things to the cloud just to come back to manage and orchestrate their on-prem like workload. And if LCS has any kind of an outage, that gives them an outage. And one of the benefits of being on their own infrastructure, their own data centers, was resiliency, right? Like in full control. So what we're looking to do with on-prem is actually let it be fully on-prem, no cloud control plane. And so to that end, I think what we're going to do is follow the Dataverse model, which is they have a CRM on-prem and they have a management PowerShell module that lets you provision new instances, run rolling updates, and so forth. We'll basically have a Microsoft-supported on-premise module for F&O as well. So.
Very cool.
Yes.
So you have a lot of stuff to do, and you have until end of 2025. So
yes, yeah. The countdown will be ticking here soon. We just have to make sure that we can't start deprecating things until we have the GA replacement. And so we're all very focused on getting the unified experiences for admins and developers fully GA, and then as soon as that happens, then the dominoes start falling. So
very cool.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah, and the unified dev environments are available today, so everyone can test them.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And the admin experience is in preview, right?
Yeah, they're kind of paired at the hip. As these developer environments, you have to have a provisioning experience, you have to have an update experience, right, for taking F&O updates and quality updates. So really, even though we were really focused on getting the developer experience GA, it brought forward a bunch of our admin experiences with it. So there won't be a ton of extra things we have to do for the unified admin experience to get GA. It's mostly just production environment support. And like I said, the auto scale for the lack of tiers, right? Like all environments will have one set of sizing. And so those are the two primary features that we're working on.
Yes, and you also mentioned today that the trial experience is also available.
Yes, yeah. All apps now have trials. So commerce has a trial, finance, supply chain. And one thing we touched on as well is all of these different licenses. Like we sell licenses by brand now, but they're all going to include the same F&O app. Yeah. So you have an environment with Dataverse, with the F&O app, but based on which license you bought, even if you bought the quote-unquote free one because it was a trial, there may be additional things that we install by default. So, Copilot for finance for a finance license, Copilot for SCM for SCM license, and so forth. And Commerce is going to have the scale unit solutions installed. But there's nothing to say that you, as a supply chain customer, you couldn't go install Copilot for finance. You could. But it's just mostly an efficiency thing. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yep. And also you mentioned commerce. How will you handle the e-commerce part? Because that's an external application today.
Yeah, so in LCS, Commerce has a couple of like hyperlinks on their environments, and it takes you out to like another portal where you manage some of the, how many scale units do I want to deploy, or the e-commerce portal as well. So all of those are going to be deployed as Dataverse solutions on the F&O environment. So again, it's the same F&O app that's present there like the others. But those solutions, once they're installed, they're going to bring in some additional UI into PPAC where you can manage how many, I can go from 0 to 1 to 2 or however I want to deploy. And so, yeah, that is some of the work that team is working on. But it's very similar to the F&O app today. When you install it or you want to update it, it brings you to another page where you can see some kind of advanced things, because most apps on Dataverse and Power Platform have one version. It's just whatever's the latest, right? The latest and greatest. You want to install it today, you get version 1. You want to install it tomorrow, you get version 1.5 because they release something overnight, right?
Exactly.
F&O customers typically like to snap to certain releases and have like more control. So we, again, have built, we built this for F&O, but all Dynamics first-party teams can use that capability. So that's kind of the spirit of One Dynamics, one platform, is whenever we found something super unique for F&O that wasn't already there, we tried to build it in such a way that all teams can benefit from it and have like that consistency. But again, if there was already features like environment creation, deletion, copy, backup, restore, those were already there for Dataverse. We didn't build a new one for F&O. We just plugged it into what was there.
So makes sense. Very cool. So I don't have anything else. I mean, we're very thankful for you being here in this.
This was great. In the studio here, live from Slovenia. This is really great.
Yep.
So thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.